Hello, folks, and welcome to another episode of the Dr. Mark Foster Show podcast. This is Mark. I wanted to comment on one of the more recent pieces of news that have emerged in the wake of the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis, Minnesota. There was a decision, apparently 9 votes to 12 or something like that, by the city council in which they decided, surprisingly, at least to me, to dismantle the police force. As far as I know, this is the first case in which such a decision has been made. Uh, I've never heard of a city council dismantling its police force before. It was surprising, but also, I guess, in some ways, good news. In other ways, perhaps I am a bit skeptical. Um, why am I skeptical? Well, the power of police unions. Police unions, as I've said before, are not unions in my view. I am a very strong supporter of unions, but I do not consider police unions to be unions. To me, they are more similar to the National Rifle Association or to some kind of a lobby group, um, a hit squad or a bunch of hit squads. They don't really qualify as being a union. They are against the interests of the public and they defend the interests of police officers. The so-called blue wall, in which police officers are often unwilling to report on their fellow police officers, is encouraged by many police unions. Many police recently have resigned from a police department because of disciplinary actions that were taken against a couple of police officers who literally pushed a 75-year-old man to the ground. Um, and so is that a union? Is that what unions do or should do? Unions should be defenders of the masses, defenders of the workers, not defenders of vigilantes or killers or people who engage in assault and battery. So to me, that is not the behavior that I would expect of a union. If my union, the National Education Association, were ever to do that, say, for example, there were cases of professors striking their students, which kind of hard to imagine, but just for the sake of argument. And the National Education Association came out defending those professors who were physically hitting and assaulting their students. There would be a massive outcry against the leadership of the NEA, which would, I think, inevitably result in the resignation of those people, those officers, those elected officers by the body of the NEA, and their replacement with new officers. So that would simply not be tolerated in my union, nor could I imagine it being tolerated in any other union. So in order to dismantle the police department in Minneapolis, and perhaps other cities and towns will take a similar course, I don't know. But again, they will have that same problem. They will be coming against the police unions, which again are often defenders of the police, even when police have engaged in disgusting and abusive activities against the general public. So I personally do not consider that to be union behavior. That is certainly not the model of unions that was described by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels when living in England, they were involved in union organizing for the purpose of giving them class consciousness for an eventual, hopeful, revolution against the bourgeoisie, against the capitalist class. So what do I think should happen? Well, yes, I do believe that the police should be dismantled, but I think that that can only happen in the context of a genuine revolution against the bourgeoisie, the complete overturning of the capitalist world system. The police serve the interests of the bourgeoisie, which is why they stay in power in spite of centuries of abuse. The bourgeoisie benefits from the unions, from the, I should say, the police departments and the police unions, because the police departments protect the bourgeoisie from uprisings or violence by the masses. So I'm somewhat skeptical about whether this proposal will go into effect, or if it will, what will replace it will be any better. Now, here is what I think, in the context of a genuine revolution, should replace policing. A community assistance group. A community assistance group. People who basically are assisters of various sorts. Could be called a community guardianship, could be called community protectors, although I'd rather not use that term because police often call themselves protectors, but that term in and of itself I think is fine. Something is not connected to policing in the way in which we understand policing today. For instance, say somebody calls up because they are having a problem with something that is unrelated to a criminal type activity. Say a person has been locked out of their house, or say, like for example, in my case, a couple of times I have been in car accidents with drivers hitting me. Most recently, it was because a person was texting and driving. 2 other times, it was because a person was drinking and driving. I was literally hit by 2 different drunk drivers on 2 different occasions. Why would a police department or a police officer show up to a scene like that with a gun? I don't see the point of that. That is not a criminal incident. The driver, I suppose a drunk driver might be arrested, but a person who was texting and driving, that person's not going to be arrested. So why shouldn't just somebody show up, a regular person in civilian type uniforms, and deal with the situation? Why in the police department do we see people using military titles like sergeant and lieutenant and captain? Those are military titles. They don't belong in that kind of a capacity. Why have we seen in recent years an increased militarization of police departments around the country, including where I live? Well, it's, again, it shows what policing is and what policing has become. So again, some kind of a unit of community assistance, I think, would be the best course of action. Those community assisters would be democratically elected. They would be fully and totally accountable to the people they serve. They could be removed from office at any time for any kind of malfeasance or bad behavior. They could not appeal it. Once they are removed from a police department, they could not turn around and simply join another police department. There would be a database of police officers who have been expelled from police departments, and all police departments would be required to consult that database prior to hiring a police officer. And if a police officer candidate is in that database, that police department should not be allowed to hire that person. So again, I think that replacing police with something like community assisters or a community assistance unit or a community assistance office of some kind with different types of people who are designated to deal with different kinds of issues, the elimination of the term police, the elimination of the concept of policing, and a more peaceful type of unit made up of people who genuinely have the interests of the community at heart would, I think, be a preferable alternative. That concludes this broadcast of the Dr. Mark Foster Show. This is Mark signing off. Have a good one.